Hey friends, just a quick reminder before we get into today's episode, come join us over on our Patreon. That's where we release bonus episodes every other week, and we've already got over 20 episodes from 2023 that you can download and binge right now for as little as $3 a month. We've covered so many good books there, Haunting Adeline, Chateau, Gothicana, and so many more. That's also where we'll cover any books in a series we continue, so Serpent and Dove, High Mountain Court, Serpent and the Wings of Night. You can continue those series with us on Patreon right now. Finally, as a patron, we let you know what we're going to read every month, so you can read along with us if that's your jam. Anyway, that's all from me. On to today's episode.
Tamblin's kind of always an asshole.
He's the fucking worst. Okay,
look, Feyre's been abused her entire life, so I can see where, she's, the is this love meme, but, he's not a good guy, and he does not treat people well.
No, and he's also kind of a wet blanket.
Yeah, he's moody and shit. I'm like, girl, get out of there.
He is like a walking piece of drywall that's sometimes an asshole.
Yeah. Welcome to Your Safe Space, the podcast your partner, friends, parents, whoever thinks is dirty. Don't have time to read books? Want to understand the jokes and the TikToks? We got you, fam. We're the Spice Traders, and we deal in spicy books. I'm Katie, and I need it to make sense.
I'm Liz, and I'm hypercritical. As always, we start every episode with 3 things. The first is a generic trigger warning. You can find specific triggers for this book in our show notes, so please check those out. Also, we do use foul language and talk a lot about sex. If you have sensitivity to any of this, please give this episode a skip.
Secondly, we talk about books. The whole book, nothing but the book, so help me goddess. If you plan to read this book and don't want something spoiled right now, don't listen to this episode.
Lastly, we acknowledge that a good book can hit you at the wrong time. The views expressed in our discussion are our opinion, and we absolutely don't want to diminish the work and the talent of the authors in our community. That said, we have some notes.
So, girl, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are finally talking about A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This was published in 20. I'm excited. I feel like our listeners may have been waiting for this one.
Girl, so have we.
I know. We intentionally put this off until we had more experience and books under our belt. And also, we were scared.
I'm still scared.
I'm still scared.
Putting it off until we had enough, quote unquote, experience doing this. But, kind of made it worse because now I'm just like, wow, we've read so many books. I feel like I have a better perspective on what's good. And now I don't know if this is it.
I know. It was kind of a double-edged sword because now I think we're just more critical.
Yeah.
So
that's fine.
Anyway, we're finally here. This was published in 2015 and is the first in an ongoing series, currently with 4 full-length novels and 1 novella. The novella sucks. If you've read it, spoiler alert now.
Spoilers.
We'll read it. I'm sorry. I have rage. The
rage is real.
The rage is real. Okay, just real quick diatribe. You told me not to read it, and I was like, I'm a completionist. I'm going to read it. I've never regretted anything more in my life. And I've made some decisions, let me tell you.
There was a decision to be made and you made the fuck out of it.
I made the fuck out of it. This book is 419 pages long, and so that's a longie for us. Now, we talk about our covers. This book, you guys have seen the covers, right? Even if you haven't read it, these are quintessential romantasy books. But I have to say, I don't think I ever looked that closely at any of these covers. Not in any critical way. I was like, there's the red one, there's the green one, there's the blue one, which sucks. And then there's
the purple one.
A 4th color.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a 5th color. But this one is a red background. We have our yellow text. And then we have this strangely Asian art that it looks Asian to me, of a wolf with an arrow through its throat, which we get the reason behind that very early on. The cover's great. I mean, I do like it. It is really stark. The more I look at it, though, the more it looks like it came out of a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, it kind of does. And I feel that way about all of the creatures on the subsequent books, too. They don't fit the theme, because this is very much like Anglo-Saxon adjacent Hobbit
Yeah, it's
kind of lore.
It's kind of a weird choice.
It's a weird choice. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie though. I think this is the book that I have the most copies of in my library.
There are some very stunning like special editions of these books, and I know you do have some of them. How many copies do you have?
So I have 3 copies. So I have like just the vanilla copy hardcover, which I got a custom cover for, and then there's like a Barnes and Noble special edition that like is black with like gold filigree.
Oh,
and it comes with like a little case. I got that one.
Pretty.
And then I bought the Kindle edition because I wanted to be able to read it in the dark with my baby napping on me. So, so I have 3 copies. I think the only other books that I have close to 3 copies of are like the Jane Austen books.
Yeah, like classics.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious as we move through this series how you're going to feel about having 3 copies of these books.
Yeah, I will say that I only have 3 copies of the first book, though.
Oh, okay.
The other ones, I only have 1 copy.
Okay. And I mean, so far, so good.
So far, so good. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. There's really not that much to say about the cover. They're very simple. They are nice. They do make a nice collection together. They complement each other. I don't know if this is the first one that started the trend, but it definitely gets the most notice. But the start of a blank of blank and blank.
Oh my God.
Which, now that we've done this one, I am going to make social media with that, because can we stop naming books a blank of blank and blank?
Yeah, it's really stale. Like it gets stale incredibly quick. I mean, this series, all of the books are named a blank of blank and blank. Mm-hmm. However, there are now about, I'm going to go scientific here and say 512 other series that do that same goddamn thing. And I'm not trying to say like there's a lack of creativity or whatever. It's just, do we have to do that format?
It's just, they're just kind of a mouthful, right? Like it's just kind of wordy. And
it's all samey. I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice because, like, at this point, if you are writing a book and you're naming it a blank of blank and blank, you are trying to compete with all of the other ones that are a blank of blank and blank. And I'm sorry, but the queen is Sarah J. Maas in that category.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't even know if this came first. I'm sure there's other a blank of blank and blanks. But any other book that comes out that follows that format, I'm just going to compare to ACOTAR.
100%.
Yeah.
Which be like, well, you put your toe in this water, so
there you go.
Nut up or shut up.
I will say that it is nice that it does make a lovely acronym of ACOTAR.
Yes.
The others don't do that as well. But we will refer to it as ACOTAR. You've heard us say ACOTAR in plenty of other episodes because she is the queen.
So
at this
okay,
moment in
that
time.
is something that I want your opinion on. People on the internet, other people,
them
will be super specific. They'll be like, oh yeah, ACOTAR, as in the first book, and then they'll say like ACOMAF and others, for the different acronyms.
Yeah, I know. ACOMAF was the only one I could think of, and in my head it was AFAMAR.
Here, let me pull it up. Let's see. So like ACOMAF, of a court of wings, ACOWAR. There we go.
ACOWAR.
So hard. And then
there's Frost
ACOSAF.
ACOSAF.
Silver Flames. Wait, no. ACOS.
The Silver Flames pisses me off though because it's not a blank of blank and blank. It's a blank of blank.
It's a blank of blank. Yeah.
And I don't like that. It should be silver and flames. If we're gonna do the thing, make it a thing.
Yeah. Make it a thing. I can't be that specific though. Like people do that all the time on the internet. I'm like, it's just this series is literally called A Court of Thorns and Roses. Just it's ACOTAR.
Well, it's like Lord of the Rings. Like the series is Lord of the Rings. Not every book is called Lord of the Rings, but I'm not gonna call it like The Two Towers. Like it's Lord of the Rings. If I'm talking about The Two Towers, I'll say that. But yeah, because some books will have its own overarching title, right? This is just A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Right. It's the name of the book and the name of the series. Sorry. Okay.
Anyway, I agree with you. So
I appreciate it.
With that big old diatribe on that, Katie, take it away.
Sure. So the queen is not on KU. But I get it.
Yeah.
If you can afford to not be on KU, why not?
I did buy it on KU.
Yeah.
Just so I could read it, because I'm reading this one in paper to go back to my notes. But, you know, I like to read in the bathroom at work, and it's just way less subtle to walk in with a physical book than to walk in with your phone.
Everybody goes to the bathroom with a phone. Not everybody goes to the bathroom with a book. I feel like if you do that these days, people know you're going to take a shit.
Exactly. And like the good bathroom is not in my building. It's not like I have like a bathroom in my office. Like I got to go to a different building. So like it's really obvious what I'm doing.
Yeah. Anyway.
Proceed.
So since this book is a longie, we're going to be breaking it up into 3 parts. And so this episode will cover part 1, which is going to cover chapters 1 through 15. So at the end of part 3, we will be doing our ratings for the book overall. So before we start, we get some materials. We get a map that I tried really hard to understand, but I didn't understand it until it was explained later in the book. And I swear to God, I didn't look at this map a single goddamn time the first 2 times I read this book.
I also still don't like this map.
Well, beyond the fact that it's just England.
It's just England and Ireland. But then there's also this vague other place that has mountain ranges that look like South America.
Okay, exactly. Okay, now I gotta pull this up because there was another thing there.
This right here is South America.
Yeah, okay. And then, so like the one of Pyrthian, right, which is where our story takes place, is like so detailed. And then this other continent, it has just like fuck all on it. And there's like some mountains and one lake, and then like,
also,
is that a shed?
I don't know. Or is this all just like desert? Like, yeah, this little bloop, it's a shed.
Yeah, what is that?
They're tiny mountains and trees.
Oh, okay, great. Cool. I'm glad we cleared that up. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And it looks like, my note says, is this a blow up? Is this like part of Pyrthian? Like, I have no idea what's happening here, actually.
If it was a blow up, that would make sense because we have the wall. And as far as I know, the wall is only a Pyrthian thing. It's not like a world thing, but maybe I'm wrong. Also,
yeah,
I know it's Pyrthian. I put another N there and it's Pyrthian. I don't know why. I think it's like parentheses. I cannot say Pyrthian. It's Pyrthian.
You're so pretty.
Thank you. But it can't be a blow up because that shape isn't in. Mm-hmm.
It's not a blow up. No, but this is the thing. I looked at this map for like literally 5 minutes and I was like, what am I looking at? Because, okay, I've read all of these books.
Yeah.
Not once that I remember. And let's be honest, I wasn't reading them that closely the first couple of times around. But what I remember is they don't talk about the rest of the world. They talk about Highburn, which is it's effectively Ireland. But the rest of the world doesn't exist. There's an offhanded couple of comments in this book where they're like, oh yeah, the treaty covers the whole world. And so you have that elsewhere too. Why are you telling me that?
I don't know, because to your point, we are a solid 5 books into this series and it's still never mentioned. Like, we talk about the going across the seas with the like other mortal queens, but like that's also kind of hand wavy space and time.
Yeah. I got real bored on that part of Court of Flaming whatever.
Court of Flaming Fury. I did too. I did not give 2 shits at that point because okay, let's be honest. That book, we're here for the smut. We're here for the smut.
Yeah. Literally it, because especially now
because fucking Esta. She's awful. She's so awful.
It's really easy to read A Court of Silver Flames.
Silver Flames.
It's really easy to read that book and like give her a pass and be like, oh honey, when you haven't just read how much of a cunt she is in book 1.
I know, but if her book for like whatever, okay, if this series had followed more of a High Mountain Court where like each book was a different character and the second book was Nesta, I would have needed a lot more to like her.
Yeah. Or like maybe just start with an apology. That would have been a nice place to start. I'm fairly certain she never apologizes for anything.
think she continues to be a cunt. We just overlook it because of the smut.
Yeah, I think that might be true. Anyway, we're spending entirely too much time on this map. Let's talk about more details. So we take place in the UK, right? Which is basically where England and Wales and Scotland are. Ireland is this place called Highburn, but in the mainland UK, we get a bunch of detail, right? This is the only place we get detail. On the south end, there's a wall, and below that are the mortal lands, and above that are the fairy lands, which are divided into different courts, starting with spring, then summer, autumn, winter, dawn, day, and night. Then there's a section between winter and dawn called, quote, Under the Mountain, and that's all we got.
I didn't like this map the first time. I'm liking it even less.
The more you look at it?
Yeah. Because also, who divides lands like that?
No, it's pretty messed up.
And does Under the Mountain really span the entire width of the continent?
Okay, I have questions, and I haven't gotten there yet, because I always thought this concept of being under the mountain was bullshit. Which is a technical term, I know. But now I have even more questions, because isn't Under the Mountain part of Rhysand's court?
Yeah, it is.
But it's not next to his court.
No, it should be
so
between...
why does he get to own it?
It should be between the day and the night courts. Is that because, though, isn't there... And I don't remember. But isn't there, like, a thing where they don't connect, like, Rhysand of the Night Court with Rhysand of Under the Mountain? Like, it's like there's two different people? Or he just has a different personality? He just has a different personality. He's the same guy.
Yeah.
I know he's the same guy. But I mean, like, do the people understand that he's the same guy?
I have questions about that, because also somehow he shielded his entire capital city from knowledge, and it's like, did you wipe their memories?
Yeah, so that's the other thing. I don't know. But a third point is, if you're going to tell me that Under the Mountain spans the whole continent, and to be clear, on the map there's one mountain. Either that's a huge fucking tunnel system, or I could just go around the mountain. I could just go around the one mountain.
Yeah.
Like,
better yet, take a boat.
Yeah. You could just go... I'm going to say it again. You could just go around the mountain. But they make it sound like you can't pass that.
Anyway, moving on. We have to get into the actual story here.
You don't want 30 minutes of just bitching about the cover and the map?
Yeah. Well, I found something else that I want to bitch about.
Let's go.
Because we don't get Feyre's name for a while.
For a while.
Yeah. So my notes start off, and I don't clock the chapter, but it's at least 2 chapters in. And you know how that grinds my gears. Like, just work it in somehow. I don't know. Make it better.
Right. Because, like, to be fair, she's alone for a while, so we don't get her name until one of her sisters says her name. But I still feel like there's a better way to do that. At least when she, first walks in the door. But, like, they have a whole conversation. Mainly because they're bitches and they don't greet her. So...
Hi-ho, Nesta. Yeah. Sorry, hi-ho, Feyre. It's nice to see you.
No, because we get her name because Elaine's, like, being a whiny bitch and is like, Feyre.
Yeah, that's simpleton. Anyway, we start off following Feyre. We don't know it's Feyre, but I'm going to tell you, spoilers, it's Feyre. This entire book is told from Feyre's point of view. I think there might be a chapter at the end that's not, but most of the book is from Feyre's point of view, first person.
Yep.
So we follow her as she is hunting. It's the dead of winter, and it's been a hard season. So Feyre and her family haven't had much to eat, and they ran out of what little provisions that they had, like, a day ago. So it's imperative that she come back with food to feed her sisters, Nesta and Elaine, and their father. She comes upon a clearing that looks like it has fresh tracks, and she waits. Eventually, she sees a doe, and as she prepares her bow to shoot it, she realizes that she's not the only one stalking this prey. There is a massive wolf also stalking toward the doe, oblivious to Feyre's presence. Feyre wonders to herself, because of its size, whether the wolf is just an animal or a shape-shifting fairy from the north, since they are so close to the wall, or the border, between the Mortar Lands and the Fey Realms. Regardless, she needs the meat, and so she shoots the wolf with a special ash arrow with an iron arrowhead, just as the wolf kills the doe. The wolf looks at her with a preternatural awareness, and as it does, she shoots it through its eye to kill it. Then she skins it and wraps the doe in the skin and treks home.
So... for like a hot minute, I was getting a little mad that this book was just the Hunger Games because that's what the first chapter is. And I was like, no, Sarah J. Maas. I see what you did there.
It's the Hunger Games meets Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah. Like, it's cold, you're hungry, we get it.
Add some fairies in there and you got it.
Well, and she's very nonchalant about the fact that this giant fucking wolf might or might not be magical. And, spoiler alert, the wolf was a fairy. What a shitty fucking fairy. He just did it. I don't understand how he just stood there and got shot through the face.
Well, we will learn later that was a choice that he made.
I forgot about that part, even though I've just read it. I apologize.
To be fair, we won't get to that in part 1. But
great, because I was like, I don't remember that. Did I not read it?
No, we haven't gotten there yet. But we do find out eventually that this fairy wolf thing could have eviscerated her and chose not to, specifically.
Okay, good. I'm so glad that you said that wasn't the first part, because I was like, did I not read the right chapters?
No, you're good.
Great, cool. Then it's been a solid 2 years since I read this, so I feel like I get a pass.
Totally. So when Feyre gets home, we're introduced to just how awful the rest of her family is. We learned that they are a disgraced former gentry, that her father was made lame because of outstanding debts, and her 2 sisters are useless and entitled. No one feels the need to help out around their dirty cottage except for Feyre, and it's here that we learn that her name is actually Feyre. She describes her sisters as lovely, with golden skin and honey hair that they all share, but on them it looks refined. On Feyre it looks haggard, probably because they treat her like a slave.
She's the only one doing any work.
Yeah. Nesta is described as being born with a sneer on her face, and boy is she ever. And Elaine is described as being simple. The thought of being helpful, for example, just never occurred to Elaine, rather than Nesta, who willfully and gleefully foists it upon Feyre.
I went through this thought exercise of which one's worse, for you to just be intentionally a bitch, or for you to, it doesn't even occur to you to help me, and I think the second one is worse.
It would be worse if I thought that Elaine had any modicum of intelligence, but I don't think that she does. Like, if it were you and me, and, the thought of helping somebody just never occurred to me, yeah, that would be bitchy.
Yeah.
Elaine presents as a simpleton.
She has 2 brain cells to rub together.
I'm not joking. I didn't get that impression the first 2 times that I read this book. I am convinced that she is simple.
I am convinced that she is simple too. And I want, if I have to read a book about her, I want that to be leaned into. She genuinely has
a learning disability or something.
That's more than just being illiterate. She actually is was damaged by a fever in her youth or something.
Right.
That sounded really mean, but listen.
So another example of how her sisters are terrible is that Nesta and Elaine immediately start arguing about who will get new things from the money that the pelts will fetch. So Feyre talks about her boots, how they've basically got holes in them, and Nesta says that she needs new boots despite the fact that she has shiny new boots.
Because she doesn't wear
already.
them because she doesn't go outside.
No. So Feyre starts to butcher the dough, and she remarks that she likes to paint. So she tells us about the violets that she painted for Elaine, the flames for Nesta, and the night sky for herself. Foreshadowing!
That was exciting. I did like coming back to that. It's fun seeing.
I like following those breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
So that evening they dine on venison, and Feyre tells us about her mother internally. We learn that she was a cold woman with her kids, and she only had smiles for their father. But she died before they were turned out of their manor house, and on her deathbed, she made Feyre promise to keep the family together and safe.
Okay, so this
Which seems like a terrible thing to ask a child.
Well, not only ask a child, you're asking your youngest child. And I kind of forgot about it, but the emphasis on what giving your word means. And to be honest, I got a little sick of it because I feel like an 8-year-old's vow, she does not need to keep that vow anymore. Or ever.
No. Yeah, and let's be clear. She was 8. So
who is this mother?
Very much a child.
That's yeah, I'm going to ask this one. Is it because she always knew that her other children sucked ass? Because I just don't understand.
Yeah, and Feyre tells us that she says something to the effect that in a world that has forgotten the names of their gods, a promise is currency. And so Feyre feels like she must keep her word, even though she hates her family. And it feels like maybe a little bit like, I mean, Feyre is in an abusive situation. So maybe she's like, I don't know. I have to cling to this to give this meaning. Otherwise, this really sucks.
Yeah. And I mean, I do kind of get that in a self-preservation kind of way, but
right,
man, I don't know. She takes on a lot.
She takes a beating.
She takes a beating. Like, it's fucking shitty.
It is. And her sisters are useless. I mean, she talks about like how Nesta was supposed to chop wood in the morning and she didn't. And so they've only got like 4 logs to get them through the night. And like,
Nesta's just like, I don't like chopping wood and you do it so much faster than me.
Bitch, shut up.
I just like almost died. I'm the only reason we're not starving to death. Go cut some goddamn wood with your brand new shoes.
I would kill her.
I would kill her.
I would
eat her.
I would let them all starve.
We would eat.
Yeah.
I would eat her.
Anyway, so Feyre also tells us that the mortal world is protected by a wall because of a promise from the High Fae from 500 years ago. This promise ends up being called a treaty, and we'll learn more about it later. So Feyre's sisters bring her out of her train of thought as they talk about a local boy named Tomas. Apparently, Tomas wants to propose to Nesta, and Nesta is overproud about it. But Feyre knows better. She knows his family is just as destitute as they are, and his parents would never allow him to marry somebody with nothing to offer. She says as much to Nesta, but Nesta just insults her as a rutting animal who will soon have no one left to remember her, and she and Elaine go into their shared room and close the door.
Oof. Also, we learn more about Tomas later, and oof.
Yeah, like, just the mean girl attitude here. Like, so we learn later, it's not giving anything away here, that Feyre is 19. She is the youngest, as we've mentioned. And so that means that her sisters are at least 20. Or let's just say at least 19. One of them is 19, one of them is at least 20, probably older than that. And just the way that they're acting feels a lot like Mean Girls in high school. Mm-hmm. Like, their frontal cortexes are not fully formed, like, at all, and they're just nasty.
I want to say something, like, a part of me wants to be like, Sarah J. Maas, you couldn't give them, like, more interesting personalities than them just being the evil stepsisters? Because now we're getting more Cinderella than Beauty and the Beast.
Right.
And I just hate them. And I don't really understand why they have to be so hateable.
Yeah, like, Nesta could be mean and Elaine could be lazy, and they could do it in a way that feels a little bit more, like, age appropriate.
That's the thing. It's just not age appropriate. It's like, it's just Mean Girls.
Right.
Which works when you're 14.
Yeah, when you're 14 and when literally Feyre is the only one that's keeping them alive. Like, that's the other thing that I just don't connect here, and it has always felt very implausible, specifically with Nesta, because Nesta is such a cunt.
She's
like,
such a
all
cunt.
the time. And, like, I just don't understand, one, why Feyre would keep somebody like that alive willfully, and two, how you could just be so mean to somebody who's literally the only reason why you're alive. Like, that's sociopathic levels of disgusting.
That's the thing, is that, like, there's no, because she could be mean without being this horrible sociopath.
Right.
And again, we will read Nesta's book. There is one from her point of view if you haven't read any of these books. And I don't understand how she is redeemed. Even having read it and now going back, why? Why is she?
I think I was blinded by the smut.
Me too. Blinded by the smut. I don't understand why she has to be so ungrateful. Like, even her just saying, like, a begrudging, like, thank you over dinner would go a long way. But she just literally nothing.
And Feyre tells us later, it's part of part 1. I don't call out when it specifically it is, but she chalks it up to Nesta knowing that she and Feyre are cut from the same cloth, but Feyre is able to fight her own battles and Nesta's not. So she almost couches it in, like, a jealousy perspective. But again, it's like a lot. It's vitriolic.
It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah. So anyway, when she's alone with their father, Feyre tells him that he should talk some sense into Nesta, but he wants Nesta to have hope. Feyre knows better than that, though, and knows that hope for a better life for them is futile. The next day, Feyre and her sisters go into town to sell the pelts that she had gotten. On the way, they run into a group of the Children of the Blessed, which is a cult that worships the Fae like gods. They end up getting into a verbal altercation, and it's clear that Feyre and her sisters think poorly of the Fae, as do most of the people in town. So the backstory here is that the Fae, before this treaty of 500 years ago, this promise, used to keep mortals as slaves, and since then have not, but they also, like, cut them off from most of this island, right? So they got their freedom, but they're kind of left to fend for themselves.
It's kind of why they're all very poor, at least in this area.
Yeah. So Feyre drags Nesta specifically away from this group of people before they can get into like a physical altercation. And she tells her sisters to fuck off while she can sell these pelts. So she ends up approaching a mercenary who is posted up near the fountain. She ends up selling her pelts to this mercenary for more than double than she would get from the regular merchants. And the mercenary tells her the reason that she's doing this for Feyre is because somebody once showed her a kindness and that it's time for her to repay that. She goes on to warn Feyre that the Fae are coming across the wall with more and more frequency and that it's increasingly dangerous to live so close. She tells Feyre that she and her family should leave if they can. Feyre goes on to tell us internally that the treaty between the two civilizations was hard fought and originally crafted by 8 mortal queens. But it's also very old, and it's known that there are holes in the magical wall even when it was first made.
I just had a thought about the map. Because it's an island. The mortal lands are very tiny. Are there just like 5,000 mortals left in the world?
I don't know. I had that thought too, because there can't be very many of them.
No, because it's like the bottom sliver of this island. I mean, we have the mystery continent, but like, is Feyre's village the only village on the continent? Like, these are all the humans that exist? Because she implies that there are other towns, right? She says, like, I don't have the time or the money to travel to where I could get a better price. But, like, it can't be that far because it's not that big of a space.
Yeah, I think it's misleading because of, frankly, the proximity of the bigger continent. Because, like, if we think that, if we put it in the same context of the UK island, like, the south of the UK includes London and a couple of other bigger towns like Brighton and things like that. So it's possible for there to be, like, a handful of million people.
Okay.
But it's not a lot.
No.
And I did have that question, too, because the mercenary even talks about how she did work for a dude who has since left and sailed to the mainland, mortal lands. So my question immediately was, like, are we all having this problem, or is it just a Pyrthian problem?
Yeah.
That the walls have holes in it.
Right. And why and where do the holes come from? And also we learn later, I think Tamlin says, like, we're always allowed to cross the walls.
Yeah.
So,
we
like,
don't have that problem.
So, like, why are there...
What are we doing?
What are we doing? The wall is really just kind of like a Band-Aid of, like, cool, you're not slaves, I guess.
It really feels more like something to keep the mortals out of the Fey worlds. Like,
yeah. Sure does.
You can't sit with us kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, Feyre rejoins her sisters, and as they start walking back to their cottage, she sees Isaac. Isaac is a local farm boy and has been her one and only lover for a couple of years now. She admits that there's no love between them, but it still stung when she found out recently that he was intending to be married to someone else. But she ends up going to meet him anyway, and it's implied that they have sex, but we don't see it.
Which is fine. I'm kind of glad we don't see it, because I got big ledge vibes where, like, we just know it's a thing, but, like, we don't need to see it because that's not what we're here for. Exactly. And I don't want to read that.
No, I don't either. Especially because Feyre describes it as, like, not very coordinated and kind of hurried and, like, very young.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, that doesn't sound great.
No, it's just a release for both of them, but neither of them are really, like, in it for the other.
Correct. So later that evening, Feyre intends to broach the conversation of Maas again with Nesta, but is interrupted when a literal beast, bursts into their house. Feyre describes this beast as feline with a wolf head, golden fur, and elk-like horns protruding from its head. She immediately moves in front of her family, and the beast snarls at her, calling her a murderer. He demands to know who killed the wolf, and Feyre, while her father and sisters cower in the back of the room, faces the beast alone. She asks if this wolf, Faye, had been killed by accident, what would be the price for that accident?
My bad.
My bad. And this beast tells her that, according to the treaty, it's a life for a life. So this Fae life has been taken. He deserves to take a mortal life in exchange. Reluctantly, Feyre understands that she doesn't have a choice, and so she tells him that she's the one that killed this wolf, and that if he's going to kill her, at least do it outside so that her family doesn't have to clean it up, which I feel like is the epitome of the abuse that she's had to endure all of her life.
Like, and it's very much just, I don't want to be a burden in my death.
Right. How dare I take up space with my death?
With my blood on the floor.
Right. Surprisingly, this beast tells her that actually she has a choice. She could be killed now, or she can go with him into his lands, into Pyrthian, and live out the rest of her life there. She asks him, why the fuck would I want to do that when the Fae lands are so dangerous, often fatal to mortals? And she's like, also, why are you telling me about this loophole? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because it doesn't.
No, it super doesn't.
Not
and
yet.
even reading this conversation again, I'm like, you're not giving her a straight answer on everything, like on anything.
No.
Like,
and in this realm of the Fae, we get the classic, the Fae can't lie,
yes.
which is always interesting to me, but like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Why would you give me that option?
And he doesn't give her an answer, but scoffs that mortals truly are thankless. And he's like, do you want to die or not?
Which, what a quick
Fair.
ending to the book if she was like, I choose death.
I would rather die. And he's like, okay, great.
Swipe.
Ultimately, she decides to live out her days in Prythian.
Of course.
And he tells her they leave immediately. So she's gathering her things, and before she leaves, she looks at Nesta, and she's like, Tomas's father beats his mother, and neither he nor his brothers do anything about it. She tells her, quote, bruises are harder to hide than poverty, which I thought was really badass.
It was really badass, and I like that she's just like, yo, I was going to talk to you about this gently, but fuck you. Make your own choices.
Right. Her father tells her that if she's ever able to escape from this new predicament, that she should never come back and she should make her own way in the world, which, like, poof, Jesus Christ.
It's fucking dark in here.
And she has no words for Elaine, and so she just leaves. Turns out the beast has a white horse waiting for Feyre, and she rides this as they turn north toward the wall. She tells us more about the world as they begin this journey. There is indeed a continent to the east of their island, and so that map, even though it's a little bit disorienting, is accurate. I just have to assume that those lands aren't actually that close. But this other mainland is also divided between mortal and Fae lands. This also falls into the category of, why are you telling us this now? I have too many questions.
I have too many questions, and it doesn't become relevant for...
maybe 4 books.
Right. Like, I think this would have benefited from just showing me Prythian and not any of the other lands, and then exposing that to me as we got into the larger world.
Yeah, because for Feyre to have, like, that much information kind of flies in the face of the other things that we know about her and what she demonstrates to us later, which is she's kind of illiterate, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
So, like, how does she know so very little about her own world, but she knows enough that there's a mainland that also has this situation? Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
That's a really good question. And how did you learn so much about, like, history and geography, but you don't know how to read?
Very good point.
Someone taught you something.
She talks about how in the Feylands they have different ruling systems, but that in Prythian the Feylands are split up into the different realms, and they're ruled by high lords, which are so powerful that they're rumored at least to be able to level buildings and armies with just a glance. Feyre, she believes all of this. Like, doesn't need any convincing.
Nope, not at all.
She tries to make conversation with the beast. Her thought is that she might find a weakness that she might be able to exploit and escape. But she's met with bitterness and silence, and eventually he uses his magic to put her to sleep. For at least 2 days.
I did think this was funny because on one hand, like, he covers it up by saying, like, I didn't want you to know how to get here, which doesn't really make sense because, like, where's she gonna go? Really, yeah. I think he just didn't want to talk to her.
Right. Yeah. Indicator number 1 that he's an asshole. Anyway,
One of so many.
It's important to note here that she identifies magic in this world by its metallic stench. So she knows when it's happening because she can literally smell it.
Gross.
When she wakes up, they have arrived at this mansion, but it is very empty, eerily so. She's floored by the abundance of this mansion that sits before her. It's surrounded by gardens and it's made of white alabaster, and it's unlike anything she'd seen before. It strikes her as odd that it never occurred to her that the fairies might want to live in civilization the same as mortals. When she gets off her horse, she realizes that she's weak from not having eaten anything in 2 or more days.
Okay, Tamlin.
So she, on shaky legs, follows the beast inside to a dining room where there's an opulent feast laid out. When this beast gets to the head of the table, he transforms into a man, and she realizes that he is High Fae, one of the ruling nobles of the land. He's described as being young-looking, with his nose, cheeks, and brows covered by, quote, a golden mask embedded with emeralds shaped like whorls of leaves. She thinks that this mask must be some kind of high fashion for this world, and she doesn't think another thing about it. And she can see, despite the mask, that this guy has a strong jaw, and he's also dressed like a warrior as well. His hair is the same light golden color as the pelt in his beast form was. Feyre refuses to eat because of the lore that the fairy food is not for mortals to eat, because if they do eat it, then they'll become imprisoned, body and soul, to their fairy overlords.
Which she kind of is already anyway, so, like, why not just eat the food?
Why not go whole hog, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would.
So Duder tells her that it's safe and that the doors are always open and she may live anywhere that she wants to, that he is not her jailer. But he doesn't tell, it's clear that he knows that she's afraid to eat the food, but he doesn't go so far as to say, like, it's not enchanted, like, blah, 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 whatever, like, how can I convince you? Like, he's just like, it's fine.
Well, and, like, again, fairies can't lie, but you telling me it's fine doesn't really tell me anything.
No, because you could be saying under your breath, it's fine for dogs. It's fine for me.
Yeah. Like, it's not poison, but it might make you a slave.
Right. As Feyre contemplates leaving, another man enters, and this one has red hair and a fox mask. He asks this blonde guy, whose name is Tamlin, I'm just going to call him Tamlin. He asks Tamlin if Andres is indeed dead. It's clear that Andres was the wolf killed by Feyre, and Tamlin tells this other guy about as much. When this man turns to face her, she realizes that he's missing an eye that's been replaced with a magical golden orb that moves as an eye would.
Ew.
We learn that his name is Lucian, and it's clear that both he and Tamlin are surprised, incredulous, and viscerally upset that she was the one that was able to kill their friend. They continue to be, like, assholes about the situation, and it's kind of spoilery because I know why this happened, but, like, I don't actually remember the particulars, but, like, they kind of knew what was going to happen. So, like, why are they... I don't understand why they're treating her with such disdain when, 1, it's not her fault. 2, Andres will learn, went there and died willingly to break this fucking curse. Like, I just don't understand why they're acting this way.
I know. I don't understand either. And, like, I don't really remember Lucian being that big of an asshole because he's really, for a while, more of an asshole than Tamlin. Like, Tamlin's just kind of a wet blanket for a while. I know I said for a while, repetitively. But then I recall Lucian being sort of a confidant of sorts, but he is just raging.
Yeah, he's at 100 immediately, and I do think that he gets better with time. And I can kind of understand why he's being more of an asshole in this situation because he doesn't have a dog in this fight.
He's a sad, lonely boy.
Anyway, Feyre is summarily dismissed and goes with another Fae named Alice to her chambers. Alice, too, wears a mask.
I forgot about the mask thing. And at this point in my book, I literally wrote, what's with the masks?
Yeah. What's with the masks?
Like, I don't understand.
So as she leaves the room, Feyre hears Lucian pushing Tamlin to say enough, that whatever Feyre had done, it had dealt them a sore hand, but Tamlin refuses and says that Feyre will remain here and unharmed. He says, quote, her life in that hovel was hell enough.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, Tamlin, for all of his shortcomings, at least has eyes.
He does have eyes. But Farrah kind of takes offense at this. Like, I guess it did look like a hovel compared to him. And I'm like, girl, what would you call it?
Yeah, I mean, this is really where we start to see. I mean, we got a little bit of a flavor when she was talking about, like, specifically how Nesta treated her, but also, like, Elaine and her father to some extent. Like, very derogatory, very, like, putting her down. She can never do anything that's good enough for them, like, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then in this situation, she projects that onto, like, these fae because, one, they treat her with disdain, and two, they're fae, right? Like, so humans are essentially, like, bugs to them.
They are nothing.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning here that most fae are immortal or close enough to it.
Close enough to it, yeah.
So in her chambers, Alice and a couple of other fae maids bathe Farrah. They cut her hair and then they try to dress her in a gown, but she begs for her old clothes. So Alice gives in and, like, holds up her old clothes and are like, I'm not putting you in these. I'm going to put you in this other set of pants. Cool.
She, like, storms out of the room and comes back with basically scraps of fabric and is like, yo, we tried to wash your clothes and they just fell apart. So
yeah,
be naked.
I'm not dressing
or
you in
wear this. Yeah.
Right.
Like, girl, what? I'm trying to help you.
So she gives Farrah pants and a tunic, and this is what Farrah wears for most of the time. Alice then warns Farrah to keep her mouth shut and her ears open, except with Lucian because he could stand to be knocked down a few pegs.
I did really enjoy that.
The whole time, Farrah is plotting. She's unsure if Tamlin will be true to his word or simply likes playing with his food. She also doesn't know what to make of the other fae treating her with ostensibly respect, and she's interested to see how far Tamlin's word will go in that regard.
Yeah.
When she's brought back to the dining room, this is when we learn that Tamlin's name is Tamlin. Anyway, Tamlin and Lucian force her to sit and eat using magic. They literally bind her to a chair until she actually eats and has finished her plate.
Which, okay.
Yeah. But they do this, but then when she reaches for a second helping of chocolate torte, the food disappears, and Tamlin tells her that if she were to eat another bite, she'll throw it up. Which is a tam-tam.
Yeah, do you want me to eat or not? Also,
right.
Who cares?
Who gives a shit?
You clearly,
I'm eating. That's what you wanted me to.
Yeah, let me eat. And, like, aren't you happy that I am eating? Whatever.
Yeah. And this is where I have in my notes, it's interesting going back and rereading for a third time and picking up on all of the little things. Because, like, one, if you had put me to sleep for 2+ days and not fed me, I would be pissed. If you did this to me, oof.
I would be so pissed. And it just feels like a tease. Like, to wait until she's, like, actually comfortable, actually eating, actually excited to eat more. And then you're just like, it's gone. Psych.
Oh, yeah. Totally a control thing.
What? Also, you easily could have woken her up in the 2 days to feed her, but okay.
Yeah, you could have, but you didn't.
Because she could have died in those 2 days. She was already near death.
Yes.
But, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Anyway, so Farrah's released from her invisible bonds, and as she leaves, Lucian asks her why she's so insistent on not spending time with them. He says they must be better looking than any mortals she spent time with before, and Farrah finds this extremely arrogant, and she retorts that she doesn't understand why they want to spend so much time with a mortal girl.
Oh, touché. Yeah, I mean, good point.
The next day, Alice ends up dressing her, and she goes for a walk. As she does, she doesn't pass anybody, despite the fact that Alice and Lucian all referred to, quote, others being in this place. But it's like a ghost town. Like, she sees not a soul.
Not a one.
On her way out of the mansion, she runs into Tamlin, and he asks her if she wants a tour. And she says she's all set.
No thanks, bye.
To which he says, do you have a problem with me?
Yes.
And she's like, well, nothing beyond being trapped here for the rest of my life based on a treaty that I didn't even sign.
Also, what? Of course she has a problem with you.
Yeah. Let me count the ways, Tam Tam. Like, the lack of empathy.
The lack
really.
of empathy. The other thing that I really hated about the scene is the night before, she asks Tamlin, like, well, what am I supposed to do with my time? Like, you don't want me to work or anything? And he's like, I don't give a shit what you do. Like, I don't care. And so she's like, I'm going to walk in the gardens. That's my thing for the day. And so she finds, like, a hallway of paintings, which doesn't matter. But she makes a comment where she's like, I could look at these paintings all day. But no, I'm going to the gardens. no one's making you go to the gardens. Like, just,
right.
You could do that all day. I don't know. It just bugged me.
But then, okay, but the thing about that bugged me, and I think this is very intentional, is that Tamlin says, I don't give a fuck what you do, right? And then at every possible point that he can, he does give a fuck what she does.
He gives a big fuck what she does.
Yeah. And it's like not the right thing that she's doing.
You're right.
Okay.
Okay, Tam.
So they go on to have a bit more of a conversation, and Tamlin ends up telling Feyre that there is a sickness in Pyrthian, specifically having to do with magic. He tells her that that's why Andros was across the wall, that Tamlin had sent him there to look for a cure. This sickness is spreading, but it's spreading slowly, and eventually it will go to the mortal world, but for now, her family is safe. He tells her that the masks that they all wear are a manifestation of this magical blight that happened 49 years ago, and they can't take them off.
At that point, I was like, oh, yes, this was a thing. I didn't give a shit
Now I
about the
remember.
first time.
Yeah.
Okay, because what this reminded me of is like, yeah, we'll get more information about the sickness and whatever, but it made me think of Lightlark, where like some of them have like really shitty curses and others of just like they can't fly.
Yes.
And, like you have masks on, like, okay.
Boo fucking
And
who.
they're
Yeah.
pretty, like, whatever.
Yeah, no. In this world, very similar to Lightlark, some people had way shittier experiences in the last 50 years.
Yeah. So I'm just like, okay. And Feyre even almost feels bad. She's like, oh, wow, well, you didn't have a mask on as your beast. You can either be a beast or wear a mask. What a hard life. And I'm like, they're fucking fine, okay?
Yeah, they're fine, Feyre. Fuck off.
Make their mask cover their mouth so they can't eat. Like, make them blind. Like, no, they're just wearing basically masquerade ball gown masks. They're fine. They're fine.
Yeah, that's literally fine. She's like, I would claw my own skin off. I'm like, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't, though. Like, no,
Yeah.
you wouldn't. It's an inconvenience at most.
Yeah. Anyway, during her walk in the garden alone, Feyre swears that she keeps hearing someone behind her, maybe even two people, but when she turns to look, there's no one there.
I can't imagine why anyone would be watching you.
I can't imagine. At dinner, Feyre is mostly silent, but steals a knife when she thinks no one's looking. Lucian asks her later if she has hobbies, and she says no.
Okay.
But Tamlin interjects that she likes to hunt. She corrects Tamlin by saying that she hunts out of necessity. She goes on to ask if either of them have any idea what it's like to not know where their next meal will come from. They don't really have an answer to this, but they end up getting out of her that Feyre is 19 and that her mother died when she was 8 of typhus. So that deathbed promise,
Yeah.
she was 8.
Who asks an 8-year-old to take care of their entire family?
Dude.
Why was that promise not for the dead?
You know what? It makes a lot of sense, though, if Nesta is cut from the same cloth as their mother and they're both sociopaths.
Yeah, that's true. Because it sounds like her mother was like just regal, aloof, cold. I mean, that's what we're told, right?
The worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's literally the worst.
So the next day, Feyre has concocted a plan. She is determined to get Lucian alone in an attempt to have him plead her case to be released to Tamlin. On the way, though, she runs into Tamlin, and he offers to take her for a ride in the grounds. She refuses, but thanks him for the offer. She ends up finding Lucian in the stables, and he invites her on a hunt. She accepts, and he immediately calls her out on her plan. He tells her there's nothing to be done unless Tamlin decides to kill her, which was Lucian's preference, so by all means, have him beg for that.
By your leave, princess.
Feyre asks about the court and the masks and the sickness, but Lucian gets pale and antsy as he tells her something sent straight from hell is the cause of the blight. He immediately regrets the remark, though, because of her who might overhear this comment. Feyre finds this weird that this her could be here and eavesdropping in the middle of a forest.
This is fucking weird. One thing I wanted to say, and if you said it and I just fell asleep for a second, I apologize. But Tamlin does tell her that like her family has been taken care of. So she's so worried about getting home because her family's going to die. But Tamlin's like, they're good, girl.
Yeah, but again, that's a really good point. I didn't write that down. But again, this is where like just 3 more words could have gone a long way. Like, I gave them money. Like,
yeah,
that's 4 words. Sorry. But He tells her they're taken care of, but she's like, even in her head, she's like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, because what does that mean? Like, you gave them $100, you gave them some meat, where really what we find out, I don't know if it's even in this book, but like they have a whole new house with like money and shit.
Yeah.
Like, they are just fine.
They've basically been restored to their previous status.
Yeah, and I don't really understand why he doesn't just tell her that.
Yeah. I don't either. And this is the first time that it comes up, but it comes up again. And it's like, okay, can you just say more things? And increasingly, as I'm going through this book, as I'm looking at it with a critical eye, Tamlin really is portrayed as being like kind of bestial. Like he's almost nonverbal in a lot of these conversations.
Yeah, he doesn't do himself any favors.
No. Like, he tells us later that he was not brought up to communicate well, but like, there's a difference between communicating well and being able to communicate at all.
He can't communicate for shit.
Yeah. Anyway. Feyre goes on to ask Lucian how he got the golden eye, and he tells her he got it because he didn't keep his mouth shut. But he does tell her that it wasn't Tamlin who took his eye, but Tamlin was the one that procured the golden eye at a later date. Their conversation is interrupted, though, by a bog?
I read it
Boggy?
as bogey.
Bogey. Okay, we're going to go with bogey. It's Bogge.
Bogey.
Anyway, Lucian tells Feyre not to look at this thing no matter what happens, so she focuses on a tree in the distance. And she ends up feeling a biting cold circling them, and she hears a voice begging her to look, but she refuses. When this thing is gone, Lucian tells her that if she would have looked at it or acknowledged its existence in any way, it would have made the bogey real, and it would have killed her. He goes on to tell her that there are other nasty things in the woods these days, like the Suriel, for example, who would answer any question she had if she trapped it. I don't know why he brings up the Suriel in this conversation, because the Suriel's not dangerous.
No. The Suriel's not dangerous.
It can't even get out of a... We'll get there later, but whatever.
But like, it's pretty benign. It just looks a little spooky.
Yeah, but this is where we learn about the Suriel. Later that evening, Tamlin is clearly miffed that Feyre jilted him in favor of spending time with Lucian. But Lucian very adeptly redirects Tamlin's fury by telling him about the bogey, and Tamlin leaves immediately to go kill it.
Nice job, Lucian.
Which was another indication to me that Tamlin is just very toxic, because Feyre has said fuck all about wanting to spend time with him. You've said fuck all about wanting to spend time with her. You owe each other nothing, and then you're getting your panties in a twist because she spent time with somebody else?
Right, like, sure, you invited her out. She's allowed to say no.
Yeah. You're also, you're her captor. You literally took her away from her family.
But also, that's where he is, to your point, just animalistic, like not super there, because recall, he asked, do you have a problem with me? As if that's a genuine question to ask.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Sure would.
Back in her room, Feyre sharpens the dinner knife she stole while she watches for Tamlin's return. She finds it ridiculous that she's doing this, but she can't bring herself to sleep. But then, as she's looking out the window, she sees a figure out in the garden, and she realizes that it's her father. She grabs her go bag and goes to chase after him. He starts to hobble for the gate, and so, like, she's walking toward him, but she never actually reaches him. And right before she's about to exit the gate with her father, Tamlin stops her, of all people, and tells her to look again. When she does, she sees not her father, but a bow and arrow leaning up against a tree. Then it changes into a pile of supplies, and then it changes into her father again. Tamlin tells her that this is actually a creature called a puka that takes the form of your deepest desire in order to lure you into a secluded place where then it eats you slowly.
Gross.
He tells her that fae like the puka and the bogey used to be kept in their own lands, but since the blight, the wards on those lands have been weakened, and that these creatures now roam more freely.
That's
Terrifying.
fun, because the humans also thought they were safe, but the walls are breaking down.
Yeah. It's also, I feel compelled to point out here that she's still not meeting anybody else. So we're talking about a handful of people. She's only seeing a handful of people.
She's only seen 3 fairies,
Ever.
maybe 5, because she's
Yeah.
like other handmaids type of things.
And she has asked Tamlin about this and Lucian, and they kind of hand wave it away like, oh, you know, people, it's the Blight, or they're on patrol or whatever.
Yeah, but there's
Not really giving her a straight answer.
No, not at all.
So Tamlin goes on to ask her in this moment what she planned to do, and she tells him, I want to go the fuck home. I made a vow to protect my family, and now I can't because of this stupid fucking treaty. And this is where Tamlin tells her again that her family is more well taken care of now than when she was with them. He says they are fed and comfortable. And it's here that Feyre feels off kilter because her vow is effectively fulfilled. But she derived a lot of meaning from that vow, and now she doesn't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, because now her life is literally worthless.
Yeah. Ugh. So this is where Feyre asks, again, where everyone is. And Tamlin is like, well, you know, they're at the border. You know, when I'm here, we don't need a lot of protection because I'm, you know, a badass or whatever.
Great.
And this is where he talks about training with his father's army to protect the land because it wasn't his original lot to rule. Feyre doesn't ask a follow-up question. Not a follow-up question to be seen.
Not a one.
So the next couple of days pass, and Tamlin is in a mood about the Bogge because he hasn't found it and hasn't been able to kill it yet, and he goes off hunting it every day. Feyre barely sees him, and Lucian tells her that this is normal for Tamlin because he has to show strength in order to rule properly. And my perspective is, no, he does this because he doesn't know how to process his feelings and is closer to his beast form than his man form.
Yeah, he just doesn't know how to process anything.
No. One night, Feyre dreams of killing Andras again. The whole time she feels watched, but when she's done skinning the wolf this time, he turns into a man and it jerks her awake.
Gross.
For the first... So fucking gross. She talks about how the body steams in the snow. Yeah.
Trauma.
This is the first time that she feels shame for what she did.
Oof.
It was dark in here. So this same night, she goes wandering just so she doesn't have any more nightmares. And she begins to make a map of the house because she's determined to learn about her surroundings. As she stands in the main foyer of the house, Tamlin comes back. He's covered in blood and his clothes are in tatters. He is devoid of emotion. He's like a space cadet. Feyre asks him whether he killed the Bogge, and he says yes. He asks what she's doing, and she tells him, and he deduces that she can't read.
Well,
he just says it. He's like, you can't read, can you?
I did actually really enjoy that scene. We're not going to beat around the bush here. Like, come on.
So knowing that it's just another thing that makes her less than, Feyre deflects, asking where they can clean him up. And so he leads her to an infirmary. And so this is just one very clear example of where she deflects away from like her supposed weaknesses and doesn't ask for help. But she does that a lot. Like her internal monologue is when she doesn't have any information about something and she's asked a direct question. Like internally, she's hearing these words of like ignorant, worthless, like really harsh things.
Yeah.
And she consistently tells us that she hears Nesta saying those words.
Gee, I wonder why. That bitch.
That bitch. So Feyre bandages Tamlin's hand or something, and he asks her how she learned to be so good at other things without being able to read. She tells him, quote, "That's what happens when you're responsible for lives other than your own, isn't it? You do what you have to do." And I think it's just so dark in here that fully 3 other adults relied on somebody who is a child to take care of them.
It's so dark in here. And like, I understand why her personality is the way it is, but I do wish that she had more pride in the fact that she is the only reason her family was alive.
I wish that she would be a little bit clearer about that. Like, she gives her family like so much leeway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, she doesn't give us a good reason. She's just like, yeah, I mean, they treated me like shit, but I did this thing for them. And it's like, okay, how do you feel nothing about it? She's not like bitter. She doesn't say like, I really resent or I hate this. Like, she'll say offhanded things like, oh, when our father decided that we existed, right? Like that kind of thing. But I wanted her to have a little bit stronger emotion for being treated like absolute shit.
Yeah, the only time she really does say anything is when it's kind of it's family as a whole, like you said. It's never really about her, with the exception of her, I am a worthless piece of human.
Right, exactly. She's internalized all of that hate to herself, I think. So anyway, the next day, she overhears Lucian and Tamlin fighting. Lucian accuses Tamlin of giving up, and Tamlin warns him to watch what he says. Feyre makes a sound on accident, though, and she's forced to enter the room and stop the conversation. And when she does this, she tries to cover for herself by asking if Lucian's going to ride that day. This is what she does most days. She goes for a ride with Lucian.
She has no hobbies.
But Lucian's not going for a ride, and he foists Feyre onto Tamlin. And this is something that Feyre really doesn't want. And this is where I really started to notice, and so I went back at all of the other interactions, and she had similar internal monologues, but Lucian says to her something like, he can take you for a ride. And her internal monologue immediately is no.
Yep. She has zero interest in spending any time with Tamlin.
Yep. And it's interesting to me that it's so visceral. Like, no, I don't want to do that. Absolutely not.
It is really interesting, especially knowing where this goes. I'm having a really hard time understanding or remembering how we get anywhere.
Truly.
Like, beyond just straight up settling for this human. Fairy.
It's got to be based in a lot of what she says. Like, I don't really remember, but I'm interested to see how her internal monologue toward him changes.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been into it if it was like, man, I hate this guy, but he's kind of hot.
Exactly. But we don't even get any, like, comment on his appearance, really. I mean, like, she gives us the basic appearance, but her internal monologue is never ogling him or admiring him.
No.
Even I think at some point, maybe their first dinner, Lucian says something like, I get why you don't want to look at me, but like, look at that guy. He's pretty cute, right? And Farrah's just like, no.
Yeah. Like, she'll say things like when Tamlin came in and he was injured, she'll say like, oh, he's clearly muscular and like male, but she's not like, and I'm drooling, right? Like, it's not that.
No, it's purely in just like an assessing, like, he's a dude and he has muscles. Like,
right.
It means
observationally.
nothing. Observationally, that's the word. Like, she has there's zero interest.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. I'm so interested to see how this goes. Or how it gets to where I know it's going.
Right, exactly. So Feyre ends up telling Tamlin that she doesn't want to go for a hunt, so instead he shows her the library. It's there that she begins on her own to try to improve her reading skills. But she's far too proud to ask for help, even when Tamlin offers it. She hears Nesta's voice in her head telling her she's ignorant and worthless. During her exploration of the library, she also uncovers a wall mural that is part map and part history. It shows the creation of everything from a black cauldron, shows the beforelands, the battle of the treaty, and the afterlands. She sees no detail on the mortal lands and finds that offensive, but she also sees one big bald mountain in the north that isn't labeled. But she remarks, this map is probably for Fae. The Fae probably know what that mountain is, and it's not for me, because I don't live here.
Which is also why there's no detail in the mortal lands, girly.
Exactly.
Just saying.
That evening, she seeks Lucian out and asks him how to trap the Suriel. He tells her, and they kind of have this, like, hypothetical conversation, but it's clear that Lucian knows that she's going to do that.
Yeah.
And this is so interesting to me. We haven't gotten to the point where we find out his motivations here, but I genuinely wonder if he was trying to kill her.
I don't know. I wondered that the first time I read this, and reading this conversation again, I really feel like he was hoping she would die.
It's either that or he was, like, convinced that she was going to be fine. I don't know how he would feel that way, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
So he tells her to use a freshly slaughtered chicken as bait in the middle of a grove of young birch trees and to use a double loop snare to make sure that the Suriel's limbs are tied down. He makes it clear that both he and Tamlin will be out for the day. So Feyre immediately grabs what she needs and she sets out to hunt the Suriel. She posts up in a clearing of the correct trees and sets her trap. Hours later, she is successful. The Suriel appears and is caught in her trap. and is described as being clothed in black, tattered robes with a veil over its head. It had, quote, a face that looked like it had been crafted from dried, weather-worn bone, its skin either forgotten or discarded, a lipless mouth and 2 long teeth held by blackened gums, slitted holes for nostrils, and eyes that were nothing more than swirling pits of milky white, the white of death, the white of sickness, the white of clean-picked corpses, end quote.
Which is such a great description.
It really is. It makes my skin crawl in the best way.
Exactly. So I was worried that we had elevated this series like so high that the writing wasn't actually going to be that good, even if the plot was okay. But her writing is really good.
Her writing is really good, which I appreciate.
Yeah, because I was scared.
That was concerned.
I was concerned.
It's interesting to me, too, going back and being like aware of the significance of all of these things because I've read this book. Like, the Surreal is immediately entertained.
Oh, yeah.
I'll say.
I got the feeling that the Surreal wasn't even caught. It was just waiting for an invitation.
Well, I do wonder about that because the Surreal is repeatedly described as dangerous, but I don't know how. Because it's in this snare and it can't get out of the snare.
Right.
And I don't know why. Because it has hands.
And intelligence.
Yeah. And some kind of magic, because when it flees, it turns into a puff of smoke.
Which couldn't it like smoke puff and get out of the snare?
Yeah, so part of me wonders if like this is it's staying trapped, quote unquote, because it's entertained, and then later it's a test. I don't know. But it seems a little far-fetched for a fae to be totally like captive by a rope snare.
Right, because it's essentially like a super fae.
Right.
So
yeah.
And she's not using a magical snare. She
No.
put out a chicken and a rope, and it was
And
like,
some rope.
oh
Yeah.
no, I'm trapped.
Oh, I can't get out.
Okay.
Anyway.
I don't buy it.
So Farah gets to asking her questions, and the first one that she starts off with is whether there's any way for her to go home. The Surreal's like, no, girl. Sorry. She then asks what the Surreal knows about Tamlin, and the Surreal's like, you gotta be more specific. I know a lot of things about the High Lord of the Spring Court, if you know what I mean. And Farah's like, excuse me, what?
Come again?
Come again? Because she's just over here thinking that Tamlin is a noble, not the king of
This whole
the Spring Court
realm. Yeah.
Yeah. The Surreal ends up telling Farah, quote, stay with the High Lord, human. That's all you can do. You will be safe. Do not interfere. Do not go looking for answers after today, or you will be devoured by the shadow over Pyrthian. He will shield you from it, so stay close to him, and all will be righted.
And this is where we get the quintessential quote, stay with the High Lord.
Right.
Notably, does not name which High Lord.
Which High Lord, yeah.
It's implied that it's Tamlin because she asked about Tamlin. However...
Yeah, this is where the Surreal's just like, oh, did I do that? Whoops. But it's also interesting to me that she goes on to say, like, I'm gendering the Surreal. The Surreal goes on to say, don't interfere, don't go looking for answers. Like, Farah immediately goes and does that thing. Like, you had to know that was going to happen.
Immediately! Like, and that's where I kind of feel like the Surreal is like, don't go looking for answers.
Wink.
Wink, wink.
Farah's like, did you just say wink out loud?
Right? And it's like, well, I don't have eyelids, bitch.
I don't have eyelids. Yeah. So spoilers, she's not talking about Tamlin when she says that. Which, if you're listening to this series and you haven't read, if you're listening to this episode and you haven't read this series, like,
sorry,
you have a wild experience with romantasy books.
Okay, because that's the thing is, I meant to say this when I was doing the intro, but I didn't realize this book was published in 2015. Like, this book has been out almost 10 years.
That's kind of wild. I didn't realize it was that old.
No,
either.
I meant to say that when I read that, and I was like, what? Like, I thought it was published in, like, 2020.
Yeah, I did too. But I do think that it's worth, like, calling out that, like, romantasy is having, like, a moment now. But, like, there's a lot of grind happening, specifically for SJM.
Yeah, there's a lot of grind happening.
Anyway, the Surreal is feeling chatty, and so she goes on, it goes on to tell Farah about Highburn, which is Ireland on the map, and Its king, who chafed under the treaty and so sent his most trusted warriors to infiltrate the kingdoms of Prythian so he could make a move. But one of these warriors betrayed him 50 years ago, and this person is named the Deceiver.
Bum, bum, bum.
Before the serial can go on, though, the serial interrupts itself and says that they are not alone. They say that they are stalked by the Naga, fairies who are made of shadow and hate and rot,
Gross.
and that these Naga will trap them both if Feyre does not free the serial and run. The Naga appear, and they're described as being a horrible mashup of humans and serpents. As they close in, the serial begs Feyre to let it go, and Feyre eventually does shoot an arrow at the snare and release the serial. This is where I'm like, okay, you're really gonna, this magical fae that's not a part of a court because it's older than time can't get out of a rope snare?
It's not even like a bear trap. It is just a rope, like around its ankle or something.
Yeah, but if you go with the line of like the serial is kind of like a trickster god and can do whatever the fuck it wants, like I could see where the serial is engaging in this for its own amusement and was testing Feyre, you know?
Exactly. And could have, like, if Feyre had been like, nope, sorry, bitch, it would have escaped.
Fully, yeah. Anyway, so the Naga poofs off and doesn't help Feyre. Thanks, bitch. Poof. Feyre then fires another arrow at one of the Naga, and then she flees for Tam Tam's place. She screams on the off chance that Lucian or someone else might hear her and come running, but doesn't hold her breath. The Naga chase her and easily catch up. She fights them off as best she can, but they ultimately tackle her to the ground. She takes the hunting knife that she took from Lucian out of her boot and stabs the Naga on top of her in the throat, killing it. And that's when Tamlin arrives and dispatches the other two. He goes to help Feyre up off the ground. She's in a bad way, and so he uses his magic to heal her wounds, and he goes on to ask why she's out there. Feyre lies and says that she didn't realize that she was so far into the forest. And Tamlin doesn't push. He tells her in a roundabout way that he's impressed that she killed 2 other Naga on her own. Like, you know, she's a hunter. She killed one of your people. Like, okay.
Yeah, right. And it is roundabout. It's not even an outright compliment. It's just like, huh. I guess that's impressive.
Yeah, he's like, I came upon another dead Naga. Was that you too? Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Like, cool, bro.
Tamlin tells her that he was tracking this group of Naga, and 4 of them broke off from the group. That's why he was close enough to hear her scream. As they walk back to the mansion, Feyre mulls over what the serial told her. She begrudgingly decides to stay with Tamlin, but she resolves to tell her family to warn them of the unrest that's happening in Prythian. She and Tamlin walk in silence because rather than a bloodlust or a sense of accomplishment, all she detects from Tamlin is a deep sense of shame and defeat.
Why, though?
I don't remember why that is.
I don't either. Also, my second why are you going to tell your family? Why do you give 2 shits about those people?
Let them die. Who cares?
Like,
your vow is fulfilled.
and there's clearly no love lost. Like, at no point do we get any sort of, like, begrudging respect or love. Not even, like, I love them because they're my family. It's just, like, I have to take care of these fucktards.
Right.
So,
because my dead mother made me promise.
my dead insane mother who also never loved me.
Right. Like, why do you have any loyalty to any of these people?
don't know.
Like, I get you're young, and so maybe that's it, but yeah.
But, like, girl,
it goes
why?
far. It goes really
It
far.
goes for so long.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's where we're going to end part 1.
Woo!
And we will pick back up with part 2 in 2 weeks. So join us then to continue the story. But thank you as always for joining us on this journey. And let us know what you think on the socials. You can find us basically everywhere at Spice Traders Pod. And if you really like us and want more, consider becoming a Patreon where we release additional episodes on our off weeks. And if you really, really like us, drop us a review wherever you listen. But until next time, we'll see ya. Bye, y'all.
Bye.